Well, welcome back to another episode of Successfully Unsuccessful podcast. I'm your host, Josh Dietrich, and today here physically in the house in St. Michael is Mr. Eric Robinson. Bro, how are you, sir? Nice to see you sitting next to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Excited to be
dude.
here.
Glad to have a chance just to sit and do the preliminary. And I love that part because unfortunately I don't record those things because there's always stuff that's good. And I'm like, I want to pull out the good stuff to use. And then the good stuff comes out and I'm like, why didn't I capture that?
Well,
So
we got good stuff coming.
yeah, bro. So what I want to do today is just quickly first give you a chance to introduce who you are, your family, what you do for work.
Yep.
And then we're going to jump right into your successfully unsuccessful story. So
There's lots of ups and downs.
there we go. Tell us, sir, who are you?
Okay, so born and raised in Wisconsin. So I'm a Wisconsinite.
Yes, sir.
We don't hold things like this against
No.
me, but so born and raised there for 18 years. Ended up coming to Minnesota for my undergraduate, and met my lovely wife while at school. We fell into the ring by spring category because I was married in between my junior and senior year of college. So wasn't even 21 yet when I said I do. But I've always said when you outkick your coverage as much as I did, you try and legalize things as fast as it can.
Got to move fast. Nice job. That's a good way to say outkick your coverage.
She's amazing. So we've been married now come up on 12 years, and I've got one little girl at home who's 2.5, and I've got a little guy on the way.
Awesome. Congrats. And so what do you do professionally for work?
Yeah, so I co-own a real estate brokerage here in the Twin Cities, and I'm a realtor myself on top of it.
Awesome. So I'll jump right into that. When it comes down to this idea of being a realtor, but then owning the brokerage, right?
Yeah.
It's a conundrum for some because, like, at the end of the day, majority of your income is on transactions, right?
Totally.
But it's easy to think that all of his wealth, he makes all this money from all of these transactions from other people, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's numbers behind the numbers, and there's cost of doing business. But what's it like having to basically, run a brokerage to nurture and care for people, realizing your comp is very, very distilled down, right? And you want to create a great, what drives you to create a great agency, right? To create a brokerage, because that's a part of the business ownership you have, but you also are very highly dependent on your own client income, right? So what's that dichotomy like, and how would you define that as a business owner, what you get to do every day?
Yeah, I think when Rise Realty started in September of 21, so we're just kind of crossed over the 3.5 year threshold. It was never started to be the main thing to remove ourselves from other vocational activities or probably main revenue activities and responsibilities. It was a belief, however, in that being around the right people would be the foot in the door to exponentially greater things. And that was a hard thing to say, oh, that's the outcome, that's the byproduct, that's the deliverable, that's the reward, because it was unmeasurable. And it was a little bit of I wouldn't say it's a shake of the dice on the vision, but it's a little bit of a belief in what would come from just gathering and being around the right people.
Yeah.
And so, our model at Rise Realty as an independent company. I mean, first of all, there's so many different real estate brokerages to be at, and there's everything from your bigger brokerages all the way down to your kind of small independent brokerages, and those are totally different pools to play in. So why somebody's at a place like Rise Realty is very different than why they're at another place. For us, it was our model is to just to be around the right people, and why and how we operate revolve around that concept. And so I think it's a misunderstanding that running a brokerage is this highly profitable, amazing, I'm just raking it in while everybody else is out there hustling. That's a misunderstanding by a long shot. It takes a lot of work to run the brokerage. That being said, we're 3.5 years in now and are starting to really start to see the benefit of why we started this to begin with, because of all the things you get to do alongside other people and what opportunities come in as a result of that. So It still occupies, I mean, it still requires us a lot of time to help run the brokerage, make sure our team and agents have everything that they need to be as successful as possible in our traditional activities, are helping people purchase and sell their residences, or investors with investing. So it takes a lot to have the brokerage run, and there's so much competition out there too. So we're always trying to stay relevant to making sure that we are the safe place of thriving, of just like, this is where people want to be, on top of it. So it's by no means the thing that will allow me to step back from my traditional real estate activities. And not that, this conversation comes up a little bit, but it's like, oh, are you ever, when do you think you'll be done with production? When do you think, are you working your way out of, production? And for me, I mean, I don't really ever intend to step back from it. I got into real estate because I love that side of it. I didn't get into it to just make some money and find other ways to get out of it.
Right.
I think what I do is very purposeful.
Yeah.
And so opening the brokerage and co-running the brokerage, and it was never the play to be like, oh, this is my way to step out of what I'm already doing. It just was a way to add to it.
Yeah, that's well said. And a lot of times it is the people, and deals come through the people, and seeing lots of different deals comes with having this team aspect, right?
Yeah.
And so if I hear you correctly, in some ways, this idea is like you guys are supportive of almost the fractional model, in a way that someone can get into real estate and have the support and the network to help them along the way.
Yeah.
Because in some places, let's be honest, they'll only take the guys that are full-time, that can pay this fee and can do this, desk and get this office space, and they get access to, the best rates because they're volume producers. But you guys are more like, let's bring people into a room and make it a place that collaboration can happen.
100%.
Because at the end of the day, right, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and deals come from people.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I'm curious how one or two things that you would say differentiate Rise Realty, and what the experience would be for an agent, or I want to be an agent, that this would be the commercial that says,
that was my elevator pitch.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Why? Because I think everyone wants what you're describing, and I'll pivot to my thing after that, because I think I'm building similar things for people that want to have entrepreneurial activity without having to leave their full-time job. And so what do we promise? What do we offer? Well, it's a way to step into that that works and makes sense. So I'm just curious how you package that up in a bow for those people that are interested.
Yeah. It's three things. It's pretty easy. It's right people, right structure, right support. So those are our pillars, right? Outside the core values that we hang ourselves on: driven, expert, servant, and celebratory. That's the heartbeat of what we do. It's the heartbeat of how we help filter through who culturally is a good fit for us. But if you can boil it down to the three pillars, it's the right people. It's people that you want to be around. It's the people that think about real estate the same way that you do, who are carrying a very similar vision and mission in our world. So it's people that you want to be around, right? It's you should walk into our office and be like, oh, I love being here, right? These are people who inspire me, who help me think at a different level, who opened up a creativity box that I wasn't thinking through before. So right people, right support. We want to make sure we've got everything that you could possibly need to help run your business. There's a lot of different types of brokerages and stuff out there. Of course, everyone's got a different level of support. We don't want to be a resource-less company. We have so many awesome resources that help people get to do what they do in the way that they want to do it, right? We want real estate to be more of what you always hoped and dreamed it would be, and to do more for you than you ever anticipated, right? And so we've got everything you kind of need to own and run your own real estate business. And then right structure, our financial model, our financial structure is different than a lot of them out there, but it matches us really well as an independent. So we're a membership-based brokerage, means you just pay one monthly membership fee. You get full access. There's not different levels. There's not different tiers, whether you've been there for 2 months or the whole 3.5 years with us. Everybody's in the exact same boat. You don't earn your way to a better spot. You don't start any different. You pay one monthly membership cost. You get full access to everything. And then you keep everything that you make on top of it. So that is a good way for us to say that's why people are here, right? We're not getting rich off of somebody. One way or another, we want to honor the work and efforts that people put in. And so we let them keep literally every single thing that they make on top of it. So right people, right structure, right support.
That's sweet. So 3.5 years building this thing. How long you've been selling homes, and what does success look like for you? What does success look like for the brokerage? And even for those that are thinking about, hey, like I have a job, but I know there's more for me, and I'm thinking about real estate. I'm very interested in real estate. Like how do I, because some people are like, oh, you join our team, we expect you to close 20 a year, right? And then someone's like, well, I don't know if that's possible for me because I don't have the capacity. And like, who's your right fit for that right people? And what does success look like for them? And how does that work backwards into like, for you, like you're splitting time between chasing after your own ambitions and desires to also then pouring into helping others to see this thing work, right? So how do you measure success? Because success as a believer is also a whole nother context, right? But in the context of your world right now, I'm curious, how what does that look like?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this in my previous statement, but the be more, do more mentality is very helpful for us as guardrails. We want real estate to be more of what you always hoped it was going to be, right? I think real estate has made false promises to individuals because you see what's out online, you see what's on social media, and you get into it thinking it's going to look like X and it ends up looking like Y.
Totally.
Right. So I think helping people clarify that on the front end is also a helpful piece that we do. And so we want, the be more is like, we want to be more of what you want it to be. Right? Not necessarily what we think it should be for you, but what do you want it to look like? And we have honest conversations about that. And we want it to be that, right? We don't want it to have its false promises.
Yeah.
But we also want it to do more than you ever thought was possible to, or what you anticipated. And so the world of real estate, it's kind of like this, like, real estate's at the center of this massive wheel. And there's so many things and people and industries that connect to our world in real estate, right? Because you don't have just the real estate agent. You've got, when you're buying a house or you're working with investors, you're talking about financial companies, wealth management companies, insurance companies, title companies, inspectors, roofers, siders, handymen, electricians, trades. That's like scratching the surface on who our industry touches. Right. And so the world of real estate is massive, and what you can do with real estate as a vehicle is also exponential and wildly powerful. You can help people with buying and selling. You can flip properties. You can hold properties. You can syndicate money. You can, right? Like the list goes on.
Keep going, baby. Yep.
Of what's possible in our world. And so we want to encourage people to think like that too.
That's great.
I don't want to get people to think it's just about where's my next buyer coming from? Where's my next seller coming from? So the be more, do more is kind of our roadmap to success. And I get that that's not a measurable category, but it is a little bit of how we measure as an independent company. Is like, do our agents, is this everything that they want it to be? And is it doing more for them than they ever wanted it to be? So it's kind of how we measure success as a company. And then for myself, like how I measure success. Oh boy. I mean, man, where do you start?
This is the deal, right? Be more, do more. What's that for you, right? It's
okay. One piece of clarity for me. Every year, my wife and I it's our family like planning day.
Yeah.
So helpful. We started 3 years ago. The first year we did it was horrible. I came into it thinking of all these things that we were going to accomplish, expecting my wife just ready to rattle everything off that she wanted. Boy, like, I learned my lesson. It ended up what should have been like a great, thing ended up in a fight. So
I can relate.
Year 2 was a lot better, and now we just did year 3 at the beginning of the year, and those 2 years have been like life changing for us. We really reset. We go out, we have lunch and dinner together, we talk, and we both prep in advance, and that's been really helpful. Anyways, long story short, one of the ways I think, as I think about the future of like, what do I think success looks like? One of the most helpful like measurement things I have is that I'm home for dinner most nights. And that's kind of vague and kind of specific. I live there, but it's like, can I be home for dinner and bedtime most nights? And I don't think that's the norm for my industry.
Yeah.
Right? Like we do a lot at nighttime.
Yeah.
We do a lot after other people are done with their job. And so success for me kind of looks like that. It was one of the reasons I got into real estate. That was one of the promises real estate made to me 6 years ago. I'm pretty new, I would say. Like, I'm still green to our industry. I got in right pre-COVID, and when it was, trial by fire. But that was a promise, is that, right or wrong, it promised me that I could have so much flexibility in my schedule that I could be home for dinner. And now with having a 2.5-year-old and knowing that our life gets going to be busier and she's going to want to be around more, I'm going to want to be around her more and taking her stuff, home by dinner is like a good little measurement for us on, am I organizing my schedule in a good way? Have I set enough things up to kind of like allow for that? It's a good little guardrail. So not the most not the most sophisticated answer, but I love what I get to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the layers, right? One of the many layers. And I think what you say is often the most profound is the simplest, because guardrails is where I was going. And guardrails are what on the road? To prevent catastrophic failure.
Right.
Okay, so before you hit guardrails, you have gravel. Yeah. Right. You have lines that you visually see. Then you have gravel. Then you have guardrails. And if you go off of them, you are in the ditch. Yeah. Right. And so I think what's important is a couple of things. A, you're taking your wife's input into building a schedule that drives the constraints or the limitations or guardrails that force you to be most creative to maximize the financial goals. Notice how you didn't say financial goals and it was at whatever means necessary. It's like, okay, I get to basically, my wife understands, we've come to the place to this one thing. Yeah. And we can point to this thing that, you know what, she obviously wants to be heard and loved and understood. Yeah. But she knows you're the breadwinner and your part of your role is to go out and make things happen. And clients can only see properties at certain times. Yeah. That's your constraint. But we've said, okay, we can go after this, but it's like having the counterbalance number. You have these rules that you can work with it, right? And so commend you for incorporating your wife into planning. And I know for many years, even for me now at 41, I'm learning to say, oh, I should bring my wife into this and ask her. Yeah. And not because I needed to tell her, but because I just was doing me selfishly, not bringing her into. And I was like, dang. And so opportunities for others to learn, it's like, what does success look like? Well, let's build this together. That includes what time of day, what kind of schedule. And then at the end of the day, if it's too hard to figure that out, let's just create a rule. Be home by dinner most nights.
It's kind of simple.
Yeah. Right? No, but now, and to truth be told, to your point, at some point, if that's many nights, not most, then there's a debate. And then it's, you have to listen to your wife. What is she saying? And acknowledging how she's feeling. Tell me about that, where you're, and we spent a lot of time talking about this one particular area. And I think it reflects so many people's personalities that things don't happen overnight. Sometimes we get the deal overnight. Sometimes we drive off the cliff overnight. But most things happen gradually in the negative way or gradually in the positive way, compounding habits, right? But where in your life, in your marriage and with your daughter and soon to be bigger family, do you realize there's some imbalance that you maybe need to stop and hit pause and maybe check it to say, is it going in the wrong direction? And to your point, like, okay, wife says most nights, boom. How has that been a challenge for her to be like, hey, yo, and then let's look at other areas of your life. I'm really curious how you have that.
Yeah. Oh, good question. And it's always like kind of a moving target. I mean, she's so generous. I cannot even fathom what it's like to be married to a realtor because it requires so much variability, which I thrive on, right? Like I did 9 to 5 for a while. And it drove me just about insane. Like the variety is actually perfect for me. As a spouse, I can imagine it being horrible. So, we have a really good line of communication where, every Sunday night we do our check-ins, right? We have once a month, at the beginning of the month, we lay out the calendar. And then every single week on Sundays, Sunday afternoon, usually when our daughter goes down or in the nighttime, what's the calendar plan for the week? What nights are open? What nights are not open? And then it's a little bit at like knowing some variety, but if I get clients who reach out and said, hey, can we go see stuff? It's like, okay, I know my free night is Wednesday night, Thursday night, whatever it is. I know I've kind of got some freedom within that calendar block to book but still checking saying, hey, I did have some clients book on Thursday night. So, then we can work our way around that. So it's just enough of like calendar blocking and scheduling where it works, and knowing I got some flexibility and freedom on what days I can't, what days like, hey, that's Tuesdays are tied up for me right now. Does Wednesday morning work? Does Thursday morning work? So I think those things have been helpful. The yearly calendar plan, the once a month at the beginning of the month, and then every single week on the quick, the dirty details of what's happening, like that week specifically. Does that answer your question?
That's great.
I kind of forget where we started.
No, we started with first recognizing when you get off, like, okay, so yeah, you're meeting, you're planning, you have a drum beat, you're aligned, and it's, first of all, hands off, because sometimes it's over engineering a system that's impossible, but not having a system is also failure. And most of the reasons, one of the main reasons in divorce and couples not making things work is just unmet expectations, like unrealistic expectations, or not even having expectations. So it's like, okay, now, but when does it tip where she's like, hey, this most nights thing, and that's where maybe she'll catch it on a weekly or a monthly. It's like, this ain't working. Last month was bad. So are you guys forcing that audit, like saying, hey, how did that look?
That's I don't know if we're forcing the audit, but it certainly comes up where it's like, oh, we haven't gone on a date in quite a while, right? Our scheduled, once a month date, that didn't happen.
Hasn't happened,
and that's for a variety. It's not just because of my work. We are overcommitters because we just like having fun and like to be around people. And so we overcommit to fun things going on in our lives, friends, family, events, whatever's like, oh, we'll go do that. And then dating gets put by the wayside. Or, honestly, like probably our biggest device, and I ironically chose that word, but like my phone is the biggest distraction in my marriage of just, I'm on it. And even if I'm a clear notifications guy, right?
That's good.
My wife can rack up some serious notifications on her phone. It's
scrolling.
Yeah, I'm like, don't.
Like, no, turn them off.
Yeah.
All of them.
But I have to, like, my own personality is like, I can't have any emails unread. I can't have any text messages unread. And so when I see stuff pop up, I like to clear it. Now, that helps me relieve my stress from thinking I'm behind. But from her perspective, I'm not present, right? I'm not totally undistracted. I'm always checking, it's a habit. It's a bad habit. I'm trying to break it. So, I think when I've done that too much, she feels it. And that's when I know I'm like kind of off. It's a compounding effect, but it's like, if I'm on my phone, even if I'm home for dinner, I'll check my phone, or my phone rang or whatever. I've been trying to do 1 hour a night. Don't check, do not disturb. It's hard. Dude. I can feel it, but it's hard, but it's good for us.
It's your moneymaker, right? And it's like, and some of that is just being able to work through that anxiety of like, okay, something's happening. And I'll tell you what, man, having someone else manage my emails was massive. And so there's like certain times where I've actually moved off of, and I'm sure this is happening too in your space, but text messages are very common because clients are like, hey, 100%. Relational. So it's text, it's emails. And, I've got to the place where though, I don't have that feeling anymore, because for a long time that drives a lot of behavior. Like to put it away is like, no, that's not possible. So it starts with the intentionality of recognizing there's an area of improvement, but it is one of the hardest things, especially when that's how you make your money. Like, hey.
Well, and I do it to myself. Yeah. Like clients, I've always said, like, I work very hard to earn my time off with my clients. Yeah. And I feel very, very privileged that when I do take time off with clients, like, Eric, go. Yeah. Go. I hope you got some undistracted time, because I've earned it, right? I've worked really hard in the other times to earn the time off. And almost nothing is that time sensitive. I'll know the things that are actually time sensitive.
Because it'll come up and it'll keep coming up, and it's like, it won't stop. Yeah.
And both myself and Danielle and my wife know, like, oh, this is like, I got an offer needs to happen right now. I need to call this person back. And, that is like 10% of things. Yeah. Maybe 5. So like the other 90, I just do it to myself. Yep. I know I can let it go. And everyone if somebody texts me at 8:30 p.m. or 9:30 p.m., guess what? It can wait till tomorrow. Yep. Yeah. So I don't need to do it.
Train your clients, part of that. Absolutely. And what they get used to. And no, that's good. So what's interesting talking about date night and like, but you also talk about some other keywords that maybe indicate that date night may not be as important as you're making it. I know it's important, and but one thing that I've read recently, John Gottman, you know this name?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 Principles to Make Marriage Work. What's impressive is that one thing that keeps couples together is not what you would think. It's not the ability to resolve conflict. It's not, solving the problems, the conflict together, or are we emotionally connected? Like, sure, great things to check boxes to be married. But the number one thing is really developing a friendship with your wife. And so you mentioned we are overachievers, not over, you said over committers, right? So sounds like hosting and having friends and doing social things together are things you enjoy together. You might be getting just the right amount anyway. And so like the date night, yes, you need you and her, but like the magic sauce sometimes, I'm just curious, as a friendship, what have you guys found that even through the week, where you're like just excited to be around each other, to share the mutual interests, the things that are happening that you do plan together? What is that intentionally are things you guys just do as friends?
I wish I had like this like really clear picture of what that is, and maybe that's something to.
Well, you might say it, and I'm like, dude, that's a blessing. So I'd be curious to hear, because we overestimate and underestimate all day.
I mean, I think it's humor for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I think laughter, fills our house, and so it doesn't.
Are you the funny guy, or is she?
Both.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know she's a drummer.
She's a drummer.
Drummer. I can hang with that.
I know.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that like immediately connected us when we were dating. Was like we just were constantly joking, having fun. So that's been a very consistent theme like through our house. And life gets stressful and it gets hard. So it's not every week, but I think laughter gets us through a lot, and it's simple stuff. It's finding, humor in the mundane and humor in our, our own demise. And so that's a big thing for us. And maybe you're right. Maybe we're checking the proverbial box of date night without even officially going on dates.
So then what's the antithesis of that? Where does conflict come from in your marriage? What are the things you guys are working on right now?
Well, right now we've, as parents of a 2.5-year-old, we've discovered we have different parenting styles.
Oh, interesting.
No one else in that category, I'm sure.
No.
So that's been, I would say, man, over the last 2.5 years has been a huge part of conflict. We were married almost 9 years before we had our daughter, which is great. I mean, we laid a very great foundation for our marriage.
Incredible.
And we know we did that intentionally, also because we got married very young on top of it.
Yeah.
But we got the chance to build a very healthy base. But a lot of that stuff almost got thrown out the window when we had our daughter, and we realized just how different we parent in the day-to-day stuff. And so I think that's been a big struggle for us. We still work through it all the time, constantly of like, that didn't matter to me. That super mattered to me.
Totally.
I need your support on that. I didn't get your support on that.
100%.
So I think that's been the source of our conflict significantly over the last couple of years.
Well, it brings to head some things I'm learning. I had a chance to learn about you and just your upbringing and all of us. Like, we don't realize the magnitude at which our sin and on being human is in the way of who God made us to be and creating alignment with your person you're supposed to be one with, right?
Yeah.
Like the reality is, she grew up in this circumstance and you grew up in this circumstance,
right?
And based on the very quick synopsis, your circumstance was this way, significantly different than this one, right? And I have friends, Christian sides, both, and I can see this. I can see, and we've talked about this too. Like in the school you go to, you have the two groups of Christian and non-Christian Christian school kids. Like,
absolutely,
what?
Yep.
Like, so yes, and how we were treated and how our parents were showing love and affection. I'm realizing some things about how love was received and expressed in my house.
Yes.
Like, was foreign to me. Like I didn't have those things, and therefore there's byproducts in my 40s. I'm learning about myself that are indications of the love I did or did not receive from my mom or my dad. I'm like, 100%. Oh my gosh, I am messed up.
It goes
right?
way back.
So a little grace, right, on your end, but I want to dive into some of this. Growing up in a sort of a mixed household from day one, right? Parents split up basically before you exist, and then you grew up with knowing no different.
That's
and
right.
she grew up as a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
Very significant differences there. But I want to just jump quickly to this idea of like knowing who God is, like most of us. And it's interesting. If we grew up with some level of faith, we realize that we find ways to say why we're different, which is wild. And I have a friend of mine, a mentor, who says, West Coast Christians, they didn't grow up in faith. They all of a sudden, they come from darkness to light because the readiness of a church, the availability of a church, the openness of a church, it's not everywhere like it is in the Midwest as much, but there are varying degrees of religion to relationship when it comes to grace and Jesus.
Yes.
And so like, oh, you're in this bucket, not this bucket. We talked about, oh, well then that means you're this guy and you're just bad. Like, what? That's not even grace.
Yeah.
And over here, it's like, oh, I didn't even know who God, and I know maybe God, but like, what is this Jesus thing? Never heard of it. And poof, oh my gosh, I'm a sinner. Now my life has changed. Like radical difference. It was like, that is insane. Yeah. Never thought of it that way. So I bring this up because as your experience in faith is like knowing of God and a logical person, had a radical experience where you're like, I was questioning, and if I had not continued to question and this experience had not happened, I would have questioned, maybe I would have gone a different direction, but this experience happened to me. What's your opinion on just our own stories as we learn about God and learn about his saving grace and his redemption and having a view of him, and for you being like, something's wrong with me inside, and then poof, realizing, oh, everything came to this moment, and I came to say, my life has changed now. Yeah. Not everyone gets to have a radical moment. So I don't, without telling your story, how do you go back and say, let's talk about what Josh said and bring it to head, but also say, what hindsight's 2020 comes out of this that has led to this very next large portion of the discussion, which is what you feel called to do because of the transformation, redemption you left, right? It radically changed you, and not everyone gets that experience. I've had experiences, but grew up my whole life. So I'll let you share the condensed version of poof, my world changes, and now, and let's go. Let's dive into it.
Well, I think, as a backdrop, I think it is so beautiful that God meets people where they are.
Yeah, amen.
Right? Like that's the story. Yeah. It is not, it's so different than like, it has to look this way. And I mean, talk about difference in personalities. You have, how do you even define culture, right? What is the United States culture? Because you can't define even that. You can't define worldwide culture. You zoom in, okay, what is US culture? What is, Western culture? What is West Coast, Midwest culture? What, you zoom into the state, up north culture different than the Twin Cities culture, right? Okay.
Zoom into the house, right? Like you're talking about with your upbringing. Whoa.
Yeah, culture doesn't define those types of things. It has impacts in how we do things, but I do think it's amazing that with as much diversity as we have globally, that God saves and redeems people, right where they are, right there. It's in the most authentic way to how we're wired, into our experiences, into our surroundings. And, you praise God that that's how things work, that he brings us from darkness into light in the most incredible ways, in the most unpredictable ways, in the most, providential ways. Yeah. So, that was my story. Everyone's story is unbelievable. Yeah. Right? I mean, to be pulled from darkness to light is miraculous. Yeah. It is nothing short than unbelievable. And I, even though my story was, more, vibrant than other people's testimony, I've always told people, no, don't sell yourself short. You were brought from darkness to light, and not of your inability or ability. God pulled you, and that is nothing short than the most miraculous thing about your life. Yeah. Even if you grew up in the church. Yeah. And so, with a mixed household growing up, and, having families that had different views and had siblings with different views, and my own narrative being written of like, how do I think and do with life? But what it did position me to is I became a questioner. I became sympathetic to other people's worldviews, and very understanding, I think, of people, which has had a big impact in my life now later on. But that happened because of the two worlds I lived in, with two different families, different households, different belief systems, being raised in a private Christian school, but not really feeling accepted by those that are in the school, walking away from God for a big part of my formative years, my middle school, early high school, then being transformed in a one night thing where I encountered who God was, and there was zero doubt in my mind whatsoever that he was both real and that he loved me and that my life was meant to be lived for him. And then being to set on this path of like, what do I do with my life now? It is in servanthood, but I didn't know as a 16-year-old, what does servanthood to God look like? Is it full-time ministry? Is it the fisher of men, the Great Commission? Is it, I was in such a different spot mentally at that time that processing through that took years and years and years and years.
100%.
So
100%.
Ended up going to school to pursue a very, almost like a pastoral degree so I can make sense logically of what I experienced, which was totally different for me. I was so give me the concrete facts, give me something I can hold and grab, to then God saving me very experientially, which was, nothing short of miraculous. And it's almost comedic that's how he did it, versus save me logically.
Right.
He saved me very experientially. So I went to school to pursue the truth of what I experienced. And so I went to school to learn. I'd never learned about that. And I just knew he was real and knew I had no other option.
Yeah.
Because I was so passionate about it. And so went to school to get my undergraduate in pastoral studies. And then the initial plan for me was to take a year after I got married. So I had to go make some money. Turns out when you get married and you're 21 years old, you're like, I need to have income. Even though I served in a restaurant for 4 years. So I'd saved up enough money to get married.
Yep.
And have a little bit of a cushion to support our life. And so it wasn't like I was immune to work at that point in time. I've had a job since I was, I think, 11 years old. Didn't have one. So was always a worker, was always a saver, was always, kind of an achiever, hustler. And so I was like, okay, I gotta go get a job. I'm married now. So I was like, I need to go and do the thing that can make the most amount of money and the fastest with the least amount of degree. I don't have a degree.
That sounds familiar.
So I ended up selling cars, and I knew nothing about cars. I was not passionate about cars. I remember my first day into how much do you know about the automotive industry?
Oh, enough. Yeah.
Okay. Every Saturday morning we had a sales meeting before Saturday.
Yep.
Saturday's the biggest day in the car business. Yep. So everybody comes to the sales room. It's upstairs. You go through your goals. Everything's on plastered on the board in front of you. And that's also when you announce new employees. Yeah. So I got brought in and they were like, oh, tell us about yourself. And then they're like, wait, and what's your dream car? And I'm like, dude, I know nothing about cars. But you can't say that. I was
going to say, did you say that actually?
No.
Okay.
I'm like, you can't say this. But
what's even better is what you did say.
I inwardly just cringe at what I said, because all I could think about was go to what seemed like the nicest, most reasonable car I could possibly fathom, which was any Audi. I was like, Audi. And they're like, what kind of Audi? I'm like, just a fast one. And that was it. And they're like, dude, I'm sure everyone's like, this kid is going to sink here. But,
a fast one.
It was, I did very well in the automotive industry, and it was purely because I'm relate to people really well. And that's just a God-given wiring in who I am. And, another funny story just to even drive that point home even further is I was the salesperson of the year for the first 2 years in starting. And I remember one guy coming up to me who had been there for a long time. He's like, how do you sell cars? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just I just relate to people. And I was like, and now that I have you, can you tell me how an engine works? and he's like, it just blew his mind, because it didn't even matter. Right.
That is just for me. So
I did work in the automotive industry, and actually thought I was going to be there for the long haul.
Yeah.
And in those years, I thought I was neglecting my calling as a pastor.
Right.
But in actuality, I was doing life with these incredible people for 5.5 years, building amazing relationships, and just having some of the most amazing, authentic dialogues ever, right? And so that translated really well when I moved into real estate 6 years ago now, and that continuing, that dialogue just continued of helping people and ministering to people in different ways than what looks like in the context of a church.
That's it.
And that's why I love what I get to do. So
that's amazing.
Serving to automotive to real estate, and here I am. So
you're summarizing a great example here of how you're wired and seeking truth, and along the way you're filling your brain with answers to questions you maybe didn't have at once upon a time. You went down this ministry path, pastoral path, beginning to fill your answers, your database full of of confidence, of faith, of strength, of being able to articulate why things happen to good people, right? And it's like, wow. So guess what? You became equipped, realizing you followed your passion and your pursuit. Like, I gotta provide for my family. And so like every man is like, what am I good at? And like, well, serving is relating to people. I wonder if I could, relate to people in a way and sell them something, right? I could sell cars, and that makes a lot of sense. But what if I relate to people and sold bigger transactions? Maybe I can make more money. Like, I can see that thinking logically. But what's awesome is, taking what you have now as a massive base, right? And then sprinkling that on as the human, meeting people where they are. And now it's like, well, you can, for lack of a better term, sell Jesus along the way by being a loving, kind, genuine person, has grace and understanding of everyone's situation because of your upbringing and because you're truth seeking and because of your transformation. You can meet people right where they are. And I tell, this all the time, is like the largest mission field is the place of our workplace. Yeah. Right. And like, who's equipped for that? Like, when you leave church, it's like now entering the mission field, and we forget that. Yeah, I know. Right. And so you said something earlier, is like, I think the Lord has you right where he wants you. Yeah. And I think that's the encouragement to so many other people. But the reality is we get torn with this methodology that the pastors are for the churches and the teachers and the point people to Jesus. Yeah. And then the business people or the entrepreneurs, the professionals are for the workplace. Yeah. And we call that mutually exclusive, which is a bunch of baloney, right? And so well, those are humans with real stories. And how does the pastor reach that person unless he's on social media, which is fine. That's great. But it comes from a human that might have the relational equity to invite them to church. Yeah. Who maybe, let's take it a step further, meet them where they are and uncover that challenge they're facing and just speak hope and truth into that person in real time. So I'm, I look to you at this going, man, that is part of your story. And your deepening of your faith gave you that foundation and that confidence, right? Faith is the confidence of what we hope for. It's the assurance of what we cannot see. Wow. I know what I know because I've seen it now, and I can confidently tell you about my story. I was this guy, this thing happened to me, and it changed everything for me, right? And you get to share that. And so meeting people where they are, I'm curious where you see doors opening. What are people...
No pun intended.
Yeah, right? No, well, opening doors is part of your day every day. So you're opening doors proverbially, spiritually, metaphorically. But what are you seeing that are people... reasons people are keeping their doors closed to faith? In this construct of ask me anything, you can ask them anything in their home as long as they feel safe. Are you seeing all sorts of mixed bags? Totally. Very quickly I know where their faith is, and this person is I'm curious, what is your job in that? What do you feel called to do when you recognize that dynamic?
There's a lot of things I want to say to this, so I'm going to try and categorize things as best I can to
bucket.
Answer it.
There we go.
I'm going to try and bucket things. First of all, I always wanted to, I never felt like I had a good context growing up to ask questions without having people look at me differently or judge, right? So that was a huge piece for me, and that's why I was always attracted to industries where people wear their heart on their sleeve. They're so authentic. In the restaurant world, in the automotive world, in the real estate world, people, they come to you as they are, right? And that's our message in the church, but it is very hard to be lived out within the church, right? So So the context I'm creating in the workspaces I'm drawn to are the context to have people just come as they are, ask authentic and great questions, good questions that need answered, and to be a place to help answer. So that's always been part of the mission, is to be in these industries where like you can, pierce that veil and be there for people. I think that's a little bit of what it looks like to meet people where they are and why I've done it. So that's category maybe number one, like how I see my work and what I'm doing. Two is this bucket of respect in I think people have little respect at times for Christians for quite a few reasons. Men especially, they might not agree with you, but if they respect you, they will listen to you. And part of the respect, that how you earn somebody else's respect, is partly how you work. What is your work ethic? Are you good at what you do? Are you kind to other people around you? And are you excellent at it, right? And I believe we're meant to be excellent at it because we serve an excellent God. And so we are image bearers of his excellency, and therefore we are called to be excellent as well. But I like to earn people's respect on their terms, in the sense of like, how do you like, what do you value? It's probably, are you a good worker? Do you do stuff in an ethical and moral way? Are you above the table? Or are you slimy? Are you cutthroat? Are you backstabbing? Are you a gossiper? I like to earn your respect on the levels that you probably value. And that I value too, like at table stakes.
Yep.
And even if people don't believe me, when we ask questions and we talk, the respect has been earned, and we're more likely to have a good conversation. And that's what I'm after. I'm after good conversations. And I think I need to have good conversations. I need the respect. And so I work really hard in my industry to do that, right? So that no matter who I come in contact with, it's like, oh, I know Eric. I know he does a good job. I know he's a good worker. I know he treats his people well. And then the door opens, right? That's your kind of door open. And I especially think the secret sauce is joy. Joy in what we do, joy in how we talk, joy in how we speak about our spouses and our children and our, like, it's one thing to be like, oh, Eric's a hard worker, but like, he doesn't seem that happy. He doesn't seem that joyful. It's like, the joy is kind of secret sauce to it all. It's the thing that makes people go, how are you doing all of that? And you're really happy, and your marriage is thriving, and your kids, seem to be, you have a good relationship with your children.
It's perks the curiosity.
It does. And that's a door to be able to share why I do what I do and what is important to me about my life. So like, that's like kind of bucket two, is like this like respect element. Maybe the third bucket is just like the home specifically cues you into so many things about people's life. I mean, because it's how they are, it's the most important thing to them in terms of like, what is this space meant to do for us?
Right.
How do we think about things? Where do our priorities lay? What's very cool, I will say, I mean, my entire business is built off of word of mouth and referrals, right? I don't do anything outside the norm. I try and deliver exceptional experience in the most simple, straightforward way. I mean, there's more complexity to it, but as simple as just like really, I've always said it's really easy to work really hard for really great people, right? It's simple for me to wake up in the morning and go to bat for people because they deserve it and they're really great. And I think that comes across, and then that has made my business grow exponentially. What's very cool is that I get to work with a lot of believers. I also work with non-believers, and that's amazing. But almost every time I ask people, specifically believers, what are you looking forward to most in your home? Do you know what the answer is?
No idea.
They're excited to host people. Specifically sharing meals, doing life, having people over.
That's awesome.
I'm like, I can almost tell you before I even ask that question, if I know they're a Christian, that's going to be their answer.
Wow.
I almost don't even have to ask it. I do it because I want to hear it.
Yeah.
It is 95% of the time for a Christian.
Incredible.
And that's not as common of a theme for non-Christian. Not that non-Christians are not hospitable, because they absolutely are.
Yeah.
But that is a key reason for Christians. And I love that our faith is marked by having people come into our home, sharing meals, doing life.
Yeah, man.
Like there's a lot. I mean, the Gospels specifically are riddled with the context of meals
and
Christ doing life with people around meals.
Dang.
So that's a pretty cool part of my life in our industry is, as we're opening up like actual physical doors for people and helping them think through home, you're thinking through their communities, their neighborhoods, how they're doing life. And it's just another, metaphorical door open into their life and getting to share and do life with them. So
I'm curious, in those doors that have opened, have left with unfinished business that have in your 6 years you talk about where there's been a call back, there's been a text message that we should get coffee, we should grab lunch with a client who is discerning between happy and joy and looking for what you're maybe just emulating through your actions, like based on the conversations you've had. So I'm really curious how many times would you say in the years have you been able to present the gospel or see that as then a tangible fruit through other conversations? Because I think there's this awareness of it. There's a journey for yourself to understand how that's appropriate and who you are and your confidence level and your growth. And I part of your story talked about that radical confidence, but I'm curious where you have to pause because it might push this thing too far, but knowing that you don't want to lose what was building there, and has that caused for an after the fact conversation that's actually generated fruit? I'm curious how you put your seriousness hat on with this influence you have, because you get to see a lot of people. Not everyone buys a home with you, right? And you have now the ability to retain influence in their lives. And so where does it go from there? And if it's not for another transaction, it might be for, sharing the gospel with them. So I'm curious how you process that question intentionally, right? Versus like, I'm just doing my job. And if it comes up, it comes up.
Relational evangelism eventually has to turn into evangelism.
Right.
So, but that relational aspect is so important. It's what allows you to get there. So it's never really I've never had to be like withdrawn about it of like, oh, I would have said something here, but I thought that was going to get in the way of a business transaction or part of the transaction. I don't feel like that's ever happened. Either I've just said it and that's been fine, or it just, I don't know. I guess it just wouldn't have been the time to talk about it, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't seen it in that sense before. But the ones that have come, I mean, I've had some really long-standing relationships with some of the best guys that I know, who I consider very close friends of mine.
That were clients first?
No, co-workers. Okay. Yeah, and maybe clients a little bit.
Yeah.
But they're amazing, and we still get together all the time. And my friendship to them is genuine in every single sense of it. I love them with all of my heart, and they know where I'm at on things. I know where they're at on things, and we're doing life together. And that's as simple as that. So I think those have been the most effective. There's rarely been a one-off, if I can even think of one, where it's like, oh, this is a clear invitation to share like the gospel. But I'm very open about my life. Like simple stuff is, hey, how's your weekend? Oh, it's good. Yeah, we had, we do church on Sundays. My wife and I actually both help with like our worship team, and so I get to share that. And
they get you on the tambourine. Is that?
Oh yeah, I am a mean tambourine player.
No, for real. What do you play the guitar?
I play guitar.
You do? Yes. All right. Just making sure you're legit. Okay.
So.
Yeah, sharing what you're doing to serve the church. Yeah.
And that's in the most like, I mean, that's not like, hey, have you heard about who Jesus is? Right. But it's like, that's a part of my life.
Part of conversation.
It's part of conversation. And that opens the door for other kinds of like, oh, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Oh, I play guitar. My wife plays drums.
Right. Curiosity.
You're right. And so that's how it kind of looks until it gets to a point where it's like, then the real questions come, which is what you're working always towards, to help share things that mattered the most in life. So.
Have you seen any of those kind of circle back where they started just as a client and like the door was kind of open and then there's this curiosity that was percolating? I'm curious how, if like you look back and the sales game, right? Like your 100% probability of not closing if you never asked.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going, all right, let's put some metrics around this and think through. I don't know the answer either, but I'm sure there are some of those thoughts around like, hey, impacting through my real estate world, the message and the gospel and the hope that I found in Jesus. What does that look like if I'm intentional, and then, without being the multi-level marketing, like, let me tell you about this secret thing I found, and, going to this club on a Saturday, you have to watch with all these people, like whatever, not club, but a conference room. But when you put that additional intentionality on it, it raises the stakes a little bit. And so and part of this is just us talking, because I'm curious how you get to see this many fresh faces, right? And the conversations can go this many directions.
Tons of ways.
Yeah. But when the opportunity presents themselves, like you're saying, you're meeting where they are. And so you're going to, but
I think they've only really appeared in the longer term relationships.
Yeah.
It's been, while we're sitting down and having coffee or having a beer, and it's like, oh yeah, we're just hanging out, and all of a sudden these questions kind of come out. So I don't think it's ever been outside of context of like life afterward.
Right.
And like follow up or like we've known each other for a little bit then. Where enough of my carrot drops and just things about my life come to a tipping point where it's like, so what do you think about this? We're like, what is your perspective of faith? I'm always curious. I'm always curious. That's not a lead-in question outside. Like, I'm just so curious. Like, what's your perspective of faith and Christianity? And I mean, man, the answer to that goes everywhere.
And there's a different context the next time you see them, and because you've, and I think it's interesting that only 1 in 4 in the parable of the sower is landing on the right time, right place, right circumstance for that soil to actually receive the seed. And so it's like, thorns and rocky soil, and I forget the third one, but unfit for cultivating that seed. So it's good. And like, there's this concept too of like dumping the truck. Like, you want to back the dump truck up and just, here's everything I got. And it's like, dude, like, you just made a mess in my yard dumping that load right there. Like, so it's helpful to do what you're doing. It's a very pragmatic approach. Awesome. So kind of as we wind here, unpacking, like, we started this journey of exploring sort of, hey, I'm going into ministry, but wait, business idea, make some money, and boom, here we are, and talk about how integrating that in your everyday life. But like, on the flip side, and to our other conversation around Christianity and what makes it the impossible job to be a Christian, is that we are not perfect people. And yet many of us want and say and try to act like, and without humility. But for you, on the side of this eternity where we are imperfect, what is the Lord showing you right now as you're navigating the season you're in, where there's areas of unsuccess or things that you really just need to spend time with Him on, to hone in, to learn, to be more patient in this area? For me, it's an ongoing struggle of like, dying to self, and that means I get easily angered, and it's ongoing. But I'm curious for you, and like, having all these demands of clients, and setting some guardrails, and have a spouse to appease, and a child you want to be around, and telling clients no, but like, and then just navigating relationships in life. What are you working through right now as your bigger mountain? What is the Lord kind of showing you?
Well, I went through like a really challenging year in 2023. That was almost like a life forming year for me, where there's a lot of heart alignment work that went down, in my life, and everything I feel like I had insulated myself with fell apart. There were some big decisions business-wise that had been made that crumbled for things outside of my control. People exiting my life that never thought would. It was like, by the end of 2023, I remember it being comical of just like, how many more things are going to not go the way I have planned. Like, it wasn't 1, it wasn't 2, it was like so many big changes, big, unforeseen, devastating things over and over and over again. That was like, I remember feeling insulated from life going into 2023, right? Like, oh, there's nothing really that would change my life that much. Like I'm pretty well insulated. 2023 rocked that. I mean, just completely rocked it. So, I call it, like the sweet cut of the surgeon, right? It hurts so bad, but how great is it that we serve a God who is willing as a surgeon to cut and remove the disease and realign our hearts when it's needed, so we don't get off course. Like, it's scary to think where I would have been, right? And already was, and where I was going. You talk about gravel and speed bumps and guardrails. I mean, like, there I am already driving my car off the cliff, and so I came to the very humbling truth that I think is also probably the sweetest doctrine I've come to know, which is that God truly is sovereign over all things. I don't know if there's a sweeter doctrine to me than God fully in control of all things. And without understanding, without our wisdom, that is true. And if God wants to do work on your heart, he will stop at nothing to get it. And that's a sweet, sweet truth that we can hold to. If my life is headed towards destruction, God will align my heart, and it will be hard. And there is a role that I play, right? That is this mysterious dichotomy of work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it's God who wills and works in you. That we don't understand that. We don't understand the harmony. We don't understand that the Venn diagram of our working, God's willing. But there's a role in there, and I had to buckle up, and that was like doing work with God, and he was pulling and aligning and moving, and my faith got really formed and re-solidified in 2023, and even through parts of 2024. And so I think that has been very noteworthy in my life of how he's changing me and my life, trusting that he's in control truly of all things, that there is a calling on my life to do certain things and not others, and that's an okay thing. I'm part of it, not being okay with what I believe to be is success in life and what I think is not okay for success in my life, and letting go of those comparisons. So yeah, that's been big. Those are big changes in my life now. And I think I've reset my priorities, reset where I spend my time, reset where I, mentally go when things are hard. So yeah.
Yeah. And the path to getting there is like, it's hindsight when you get there and have changed and done the work, and you look back and you're like, oh, but like on the road to it, it's like, I don't know, this is what's happening. Right. And so what for you is it just the series of things? What was the breaking point though, where you're like, well, I got to just reorient? Was there ever that, or was it just
gone?
What do you mean?
There was nothing else. I had nothing else. Everything I thought I had, I let go of.
So in this context, being like, ego, what's inside, how I'm wired, what I'm chasing after, what motivates me, like this stuff.
Yeah. Financial, relationships, ego, pride. Relationships was a huge category. I mean, I value relationships so much. And so,
like letdowns, like what examples crushed you the most in the relationship bucket?
Yeah. People who I thought I was dependent on and that would always be around left. And it's just like, whoa, like where did that come from? Like that's, caught me off guard, or, the financial, component, especially, right? Like, have worked really hard. I wouldn't say I'm like frugal, but I'm very conservative in my finances. We live very within our means. And I'm like, that's why I felt insulated, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm smart. I'm a good steward. I live well within my means. I don't value, expensive cars and a big house. Like, I'm insulated, right? And that's a financial security for me. Gone. Gone. So it was, everything just kind of got rocked. And it was just like one thing after another. It was health and, it just was like everything I got stripped away. So it wasn't one moment, but it stacked over and over and over again. to a point where it's like, oh, this is clear that God is stopping at nothing.
So each one learning a little mini lesson, right? And so stacking these up sort of was putting back on some of the armor to go back out for battle, but like you had to be stripped down.
Yeah.
Deconstruction had to happen.
Totally.
And where our faith and our hope and, what like security we have was based on, right? Boom, house of cards.
Gone. Yeah. Which is, again, the sweetest thing that you can do in that, sweetest thing God can do to us in that moment is to save us that way. And as we've gone through, I mean, as we're still like walking through some of the ripple effect of that calendar year, even now in 2025, my wife and I just had this conversation like a couple of weeks ago. And I remember saying to her, like, we're still waiting on certain things to like not happen on certain fronts. And I remember being like, I've learned my lesson, right? I've learned my lesson that like in this moment, I know the way I want this to go, but I'm truly going to give it up. I'm truly going to give up that outcome. This is the lesson that we've learned, right? And if what I think about the most now is these are the moments that when my daughter Estella grows up, she's 2.5 now, I want to go back to her when her world gets rocked, because it will, and she will navigate things that are unforeseen like we did, and say, this is how daddy and mommy walked through this. And this is our time. Like, this is, all right, Danielle, we are 1.5 years removed from this calendar year now. Did we learn our lesson? Are we truly going to give this over to God? Are we truly trusting in God's sovereignty and providence in this? And I want to make sure that we do this right, because I want to tell Estella that this is how we handled it. We ruined it on the first go. Yeah. We can do better. Yeah. Right. We can trust God in a different way, and our faith can be more exemplary on what feels like, whatever, round 2, round 3. Yeah. And stuff. So we navigated that, and that's, those are the things I think about now, heading into future years and how God shaped it.
Yeah, man. I know what you mean. And a lot of this requires us to just humbly swallow our pride and realize like I'm not in control, he is. And to your point, like this book wrecked me and it was like in your face kind of, and I'm not, I like that in some ways. I needed it when it's the right stuff, and it was the right stuff. Absolute Surrender was the book, Andrew Murray. And it was like, why is lukewarm? Why has it been acceptable? Right. In these areas, and like, and in the area of fitness, in the area of my devotions, in the area of, like putting my wife first or my kids and showing them how I love them, like raise the bar here, absolute surrender. Like I can't control the outcome, and I used to want to, like that was my thing. Yeah. Like, I could go really fast because I know I could put my effort in and get it. And it's like, this year, even in the last 12 months, it was like capacity, and like why am I being driven, or why am I driving this way, and just stop and go. But it takes time to learn, and things have to happen, and you have to learn lessons, and you have to look for that and intentionally try to spot the patterns from the past that are coming back. And like I shared briefly, like when you run into a pattern about to repeat itself, having people around you that speak truth into your life. Last thing before we wrap, for you and having all of these relationships, then there's this ongoing struggle of like, where does the deep ones come from, right? And so they circulate in and they circulate out over time, maybe in some of the examples you've had. But the ones that are going to help, carve off the fat and sharpen you to say, hey, I'm going to challenge you on this thing. Where have you found those to be just game changing as a husband, as a father, as a believer, to just be on the lookout for constant reevaluation, right? How do those play out in your life right now?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I graduated my undergrad with a lot of friends that have stuck around the area. We've got, there's probably 12 to 15 couples that we see that, weekly. We've got almost 30 kids under the age of 6 within our friend group now. So we're all kind of raising our children together. We all live within everywhere from, seconds to 15 minutes away from each other. And so, that group of guys has been life-changing. I mean, strong guys in every sense, right? They on the right mission, do the right things, ask hard questions, have fun, true brothers in that sense. And so without a community of people like that, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
I have them, and I feel very fortunate. We're plugged into our church. We have a small group at church, and I meet with some of the guys from our friend group on a weekly basis. On top of that, every Thursday morning we get together for an hour and go into the stuff that is hard to go into. Yeah. You have to have that kind of stuff to progress and to do stuff in a more God honoring way, and because left to your own demise is scary.
Yeah, man.
So I feel very fortunate. I've got amazing men in my life, and that are willing to both ask the hard questions as well as just be there to have fun.
Yeah, dude. I'm wearing this shirt. It's awesome. I saw this. I had to have it. It's easier to build strong children than to fix broken men.
It's amazing.
Right? And it's like you're telling me that I have kids right now, and if I do the work now, it's going to be far greater than having to help them unpack what traumatic stuff comes from them not dealing with this hard stuff now. And I'm stewarding that. Right. And where the call is, I could easily run past that and drop that and say, nope, I got this thing and I got that thing and I got this thing. But stewardship is such a calling. And we talked just the reality of we're not all given the same circumstances or the same abilities. And it's very clear that in the parable of the talents, but because I have this capacity that I'm finally realizing now it's a matter of prioritization, right? Yeah. So do I have the right filters? Yeah, I have, God, wife, kids, work. I'm like, wait, where do I spend my time? Let's work that through. I'm like, where do I spend my time and my money? Let's work that through. Where do I spend what I'm trying to become better at? Let's work that through. And those questions, they come from being around other people who share and they share and they share and they share. And you're like, oh, maybe I could jump in on that. Right. Yeah. So what you're saying is powerful, man. And it's a blessing. Not everyone gets to have that, and I think for me, I was looking for a long time to find this. I want to be driven. I want to be successful. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. I want. But then going well, I haven't found that yet, right? And so when you find it, press in, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely,
it's counterintuitive often, to lean into your struggle. And Paul talks about boasting about our weaknesses. So our reliance will be upon Christ. And dude, thanks for sharing today. It's great unpacking the good, bad, the ugly, and some of that. Not a lot of ugly. I'm sure there's more ugly. There's some ugly in there. Underneath it all, we all get to wake up going, you know what? We're redeemed, and we are in the process of in the making and becoming who He made us to be. But appreciate you sharing today.
Thanks for having me on.
And I'm glad you made the massive journey from Burnsville. Holy cow!
When you work in real estate, you're used to just driving everywhere.
You know what? So I'll jump in the car. Here we go.
Just
the road trip.
Just a day's work.
Well, thank you for tuning in. It's been another exciting episode of Successfully Unsuccessful. I'd love to have you join in on the next one. Take care.